Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name is Cameron, and today we're going to be taking a look at a fairly new release from Heaven Hill. This is the Elijah Craig Straight Rye Whiskey. All right, so sometime in the summer of 2020, Elijah Craig Straight Rye Whiskey hit shelves in just a handful of states. Now, my family was actually at the beach in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and they stopped off at some of those ABC stores down there and managed to pick up a couple of bottles of this. Now, I used a couple of those to trade locally and get some other things. I was still fairly new to the whole local trading bourbon scene, and I was excited to have something that was from out of state and not available in Ohio. But I cracked this thing open last summer, and honestly, I really enjoyed it. At the time, I didn't have a whiskey channel, and I saw some other reviews pop up, and you know, there were mixed opinions about this one. I feel like some people really enjoyed it as sort of an everyday sipper. Some people said absolutely no way, and I think they all made really great points about this. But there is now a recent resurgence in this bottle because I've seen that it's just hit shelves in stores in Kentucky, and I've heard rumors that it's coming to Ohio sometime in the next couple of months. I saw cases and cases of this stacked up from some pictures of stores right across the Ohio-Kentucky border, some of those big stores which shall remain unnamed, selling this for about $33.99 or so. So it got me thinking, hey, I should probably revisit this Elijah Craig Straight Rye, give it a go, see if it has maintained what my initial impressions of this were last summer, or if it's gotten better, gotten worse, all that good stuff. So I'm excited to give this a go today. So full disclosure, I mean, this bottle has been open for 9 or 10 months at this point. So it's been sitting for quite a while. You can see I'm about halfway through the bottle. It's got a good bit of air in it. So I would expect that this thing has changed in the bottle as much as it probably is going to change, or as much as maybe we would ever want it to. So let's run down the stats of the whiskey very quickly, and then we'll get to the actual review here. So to start off, this is coming in at 94 proof, that exact same proof that the Elijah Craig small batch is coming in at, and the single barrel store picks, which now we're gonna have some 9-year cask strength store picks, but that's a different story for a different day. This is at 94 proof. So it's that sort of approachable, everyday sipper proof. I would love to see this at barrel strength. I think probably a lot of us would. But for right now, this is the only release that has come out. And so in my mind, I'm not expecting to be wowed by this in terms of its like incredible mouthfeel or explosive flavors. Like I'm going into this feeling like this is probably going to be a contender for an everyday sipper. Now let's talk about price. The standard Elijah Craig small batch comes in anywhere from $28 to $35 depending on the region that you're in. The MSRP of this Elijah Craig Straight Rye is $30. Now I will say I paid $40 for each of mine when my parents picked it up for me down in South Carolina. They were going for $40, and I don't know if that's state mandated pricing or not, but like I said, across the river in Kentucky, I see the prices at about $33.99, so just slightly marked up from the MSRP. As many of you know, you would expect rye whiskey to be slightly more expensive than bourbon, and that is the case with this. It's maybe just a couple of bucks, a couple more bucks to get a bottle of this than to get the standard small batch. But by and large, $30 price point for an entry-level rye whiskey, that doesn't sound like a bad value to me. So that's that. Last thing I will say, mash bill for this one. This is the barely legal rye mash bill, which is 51% rye, 35% corn, and 14% malted barley. So there you have it. I think that's all we need to know. I've already got myself some poured out right here. It's been sitting in the glass for about 10 minutes. So let's check this thing out on the nose and see what we get. Right away, it's got this beautiful candy caramel sweetness going on to it. The typical Elijah Craig profile is very caramel butterscotch oak, barrel char heavy for me. And it's sort of that darker flavor profile, even for a 94 proof. This rye, it's got this beautiful caramel sweetness to it, but it's not nearly as dark and rich as the standard small batch offering. Yeah, so I mentioned this sort of caramel sweetness. There's There is a little bit of oak on the nose, which I appreciate. I would expect that this is probably a fairly young rye whiskey. I don't think it, I mean, I'm speculating, but I can't imagine that this is as old as the Elijah Craig small batch, but who knows? But it's got a little bit of oak on the nose, which is great. I mentioned the caramel sweetness, which is a little bit more decadent, almost caramel syrup that you would put on ice cream in this as compared to the small batch. But what's really standing out for me is this bright, almost sort of light fruit note, or just overall brightness on the nose right now. Yeah, and obviously you would expect that from a rye whiskey, right? This one, the rye component in here, it's evident on the nose, but it's not sharp. It's not overly green. Like if you're thinking about I don't know, like Redwood Empire's rye, or you're thinking about Rittenhouse or Willet 4-Year, any of those that have really kind of distinctly green and bright rye characteristics, that spearmint, dill, pine. This doesn't really have that. It's got a little bit of herbaceousness, a little bit of florality. I don't know if that's a word. Floral qualities on the nose, and maybe a hint of mintiness. But it is not overly green, and that's because it is that barely legal rye mash bill. And I really like that. I think a lot of bourbon drinkers like that because it's really, really approachable for people who might not want that sort of almost toothpaste anise green rye thing that a lot of those ryes have. Overall, it's a great nose. I can't really pinpoint sort of the lighter fruits in here. There are light fruits. There is this distinct herbaceous floral quality to it that is very well integrated into this rich and decadent sweet caramel with a slight bit of oak on the bottom end. I mean, it's not wowing me. I'm not like, oh man, I can't wait to drink this, but it's really pleasant. And honestly, for me, I like this nose a little bit better than the standard Elijah Craig small batch. So for what that's worth, let's go ahead and check it out on the palate now. Cheers. So on the palate here, mouthfeel not great, right? I mean, when it hits your palate, if you rinse it around, it gets a little bit better because you're able to get it, all throughout your palate and everything like that. Mouthfeel not great. Pretty thin. Let's say medium thin, whatever the heck that means, But what happens with it is that the rye spice in here really ramps things up. It really kicks it into high gear as soon as you swallow. And that kind of makes up for the fact that the mouthfeel is lackluster. So I have to give them credit on that. Now, the palate here has a lot of chocolate. I don't know if I'm just crazy, but it feels like it's got a lot of these black pepper elements, especially from that rye. The herbaceousness is not so obvious on the palate, to be honest with you. It's more on the nose. The black pepper dominates on the palate as that spice rushes in as soon as you swallow. And then you're hit with a flood of those really, again, very decadently sweet caramel notes, and also that milk chocolate. Really, really sweet, really delicious on the palate. And if it didn't have that extra rye component in here, it would be pretty boring. But the fact that there is that 51% rye is really helping this thing out. Now I've got to say, with the standard Elijah Craig small batch, I'm typically in the same boat where it's like, it's just uneventful, it's fine. But if I'm gonna have a daily sipper at 94-ish proof, I'm not gonna go for that Elijah Craig small batch. It just doesn't do enough for me. This straight rye with that rye spice is definitely doing enough for me. So far I'm really enjoying this thing. All right, let's do a second sip. Some of these rye whiskeys can kind of present as peanut forward for whatever reason. I had this happen the other day on a live stream where I tasted Wild Turkey Rare Breed Rye blind, had no idea what it was. And then it was next to Michter's, the standard Michter single barrel rye at that, what is it, like 86 proof or whatever. When I went back to the Rare Breed, it tasted like a Jim Beam product. It tasted like a peanut fest. And it was totally throwing me off, and it had to be the rye component in there. Now, this has a little bit of that where you're like, it could be peanuts, and it makes it taste a little young. It makes it taste a little cheap and a little sharp. But it's not like, it's not so overpowering that it becomes unenjoyable. I still really, really dig this. And with those chocolate elements in here, you know, the sweetness is really what is standing out for me. The sweetness combined with that black pepper and that rye spice, it's absolutely a contender as a daily sipper. So let me do one last sip and then we'll kind of wrap this thing up. And now, as my palate is acclimated, that third sip was very oak forward. Right away, I got some like nice, tannic, slightly sour oak on the front of my palate. And that could be combining with a little bit of those fruits that I mentioned. There's a little light fruit bouquet in this one. Same sort of crescendo with the spice, but distinctly sweet throughout the entire sip. I'm really enjoying this, I've got to say. Let's talk finish here. Yeah, it's a medium to medium short finish. The rye spice definitely lingers on the palate. In the back of the throat, it dissipates pretty quickly, which actually I find that most sort of spicy whiskeys that are kind of younger and trying to hide their youth tend to linger in the throat, but the palate kind of dies down. This is the opposite. To me, the throat is very subdued, but the palate is actually still sort of being prickly with black pepper notes. So I enjoy that. Sweetness lingers just a bit. Mostly you're getting some drying oak on the palate now as it's fading away. So an uneventful finish, a pretty decent palate, although watery and thin. And on the nose, I mean, I could sit and smell this thing all day. I really enjoy the nose. But again, it's like sort of this mix between and yeah, that's a great daily sipper. So by and large, I would say, you know, we don't want to pay more than MSRP on this one. I mean, maybe 35 bucks. If it's 40 in your state and you really want to try it, yeah, absolutely. But I've seen this on the secondary market for like $70, especially right when it came out last summer. Please, for the love of all things, do not pay $70 for this. Let's not go there. This is meant to be an entry-level rye whiskey and simply an expansion for the Elijah Craig portfolio. It is not meant to be heavily allocated, even though it did roll out in only a few markets at the beginning. It's going to continue its expansion, and please just be patient and don't allow the market to gouge us on this particular bottle. It is, for me, if I'm looking for a daily sipper, it is just eventful enough, just well-rounded enough, pretty sweet, and a little bit of oak there. It just is interesting enough to become a daily neat sipper. I would not put this over ice. I feel like it's going to drown very quickly. Could be a good cocktail option, especially if you have enough availability that you don't mind putting this in a cocktail. By and large, you know, I'm pretty impressed. It's a solid, like if I had to grade this, which I hate doing, I would give this like a B- to a B. It's good. It's very solid. Nothing to write home about, but something that if you can find it in your area at a very decent price, I would absolutely pick it up. So that is all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please drop a like below, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification to find out when new content is coming out and when I'm going live, which is at least once a week. And if you've watched a few videos of Drums and Drams and you enjoy them and you want to find out how you can support the channel and also get some exclusive behind the scenes monthly content, you can check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description below. That's a place where we're really building community. We're doing patron-only live streams at least once a month. There are some other really cool offerings in the other tiers. So give that a look and check it out and see if, you know, maybe joining the Patreon is right for you. If it's not, I completely understand. But I think that's all I've got for this video. Again, I recommend this Elijah Craig Straight Rye at MSRP or a few bucks above. And it, again, is a great option as a daily sipper. So cheers, and I will see you next time here on Drums and Drams. See ya.